purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei.
Hello, my name is Hugh Henry, and this is Freethought Forum. We are here with Mansour El-Kikhia to discuss Islam, Christianity, suicide, terror, and killing civilians, which sounds pretty dire, but trust me, this thing is not going where you think. Mansour El-Kikhia was born in Libya. He's an associate professor of politics at University of Texas, San Antonio. He's published and he's advised the U.S. government. Mr. El-Kikhia, I know some things about Islam myself, and what I know from it is, number one, its teachings do not go for killing of civilians or suicide. Teachings sometimes don't matter, as in Christianity, sometimes they don't follow it very well. But to my knowledge, in the history of Islam, there have been very few exceptions to this. They actually practice that in their whatever struggles they're in. Is that?
Yes, you're quite right. Actually, life is very precious. Islam's life is very precious, and so you really got to not only maintain it and keep it, but keep it well, because you're allowed to die. Okay, you're allowed to kill yourself only in one instance, and that is over. Right now, it's gone. You're allowed to die for the sake of God, and you die for the sake of God if you're defending God. That's how Muslims see it. Mm-hmm. But under no circumstances can you just go and strap around your waist a belt and blow someone up. That is not Islamic.
I also know, in the case of the killing of civilians, I know of only a very few exceptions. The Turks in Cyprus and in Armenia, and the Mahdi in the Sudan, mm-hmm. when people who wouldn't join him. But other than that, that's it. I don't think that they just don't do those kinds of things.
You see, this is a huge problem. Firstly, because the overarching theology is Islam, no doubt about this. Mm-hmm. But Islam allows you a lot of leeway to do what you want within the faith. So there is no one uniform practice, except for the 5 principles of Islam. There's no other uniform practice. There is no absolutism in Islam.
Yeah.
The only absolute is the oneness of God. Anything else is open.
And I know even the 5, the daily worshiping and the journey to Mecca and so forth, if it can't happen, then it can't happen.
It can't happen. I mean, you strive to do your best.
Yeah.
But if, for instance, you can't pray. You can't pray the normal way by bowing it. Then you can try to pray sitting down. If you can't, if you're for example paralyzed, totally paralyzed, you can pray with your eyes. You pray with your heart.
Yeah.
And so there are no absolutes. I mean, there's an understanding that we are limited by our physical, mental existence, and sometimes that existence does not allow us to perform our duties in the optimum fashion that we're expected to do.
I know that there's been some speculation that when Arabs get into space, there's going to be a serious problem trying to pray in the direction of Mecca while moving at thousands of miles an hour.
That's right, you see. But then again, the idea is really not to pray from Mecca. The belief, and I think the mistaken belief, that Muslims pray to Mecca.
No, the direction only.
No. You said it right. You said it right. But the belief is that Muslims pray to Mecca. Muslims do not pray to Mecca. They pray to the unity, to the oneness, and this is manifested all throughout Islam. That there is no difference in color in Islam. There is no difference between white and black and yellow and man and woman, and the ultimate analysis we're all the same. And this is brought out very clearly in the Hajj itself, where you find 2 million people, some speaking the same language, and yet perform the same rituals, where you don't know the rich from the poor. there's no difference.
Not only that, but all sects, Shiites and everybody,
Everyone.
shows up at Mecca.
Everyone.
I know that Malcolm X, who was part of a very strange version of Islam here in America, in which Elijah Muhammad, I believe, claimed to be God himself.
A prophet.
Or the prophet, went to Mecca, and it changed him deeply because he saw that there was no color, that there was no and he decided to return as a conservative Muslim, and his opposition to what he came from cost him his life. But he was deeply impressed.
I mean, here you have to look at a person who went over there believing that the white man's the devil is actually the devil. Then all of a sudden he goes over there and he sees sitting on his right hand side is a white man, on the other side the yellow man. Just couldn't compute initially. So the shock itself made a change. But you're quite right. You're quite right when you talk about, I mean, these anomalies that happen. It happened true with the Armenians. It happened with the Sudan, with al-Mahdi, early on as well too. And it might happen in the future, other places too. I mean, there's no way of preventing this. But it seems to me that Islam itself has really not come to terms with the separation between politics and faith. And political actions are used as Islamic actions. And I think this is where the problem is. The Turks have always maintained that the Armenians and other minorities within the East have been anti-Turkish, and so the Turks is very strange in a sense, very much German in their thinking. You know, when you think the similarities between the Turks and the Germans is phenomenal. In the Germans had the Deutsche Ordnung. The Turks had the same thing.
Well, I know they used a lot of German advisors. Ataturk brought them in.
Not only the German advisors, the culture itself, the military culture.
Yeah.
The military culture, the Turkish culture is really the janissarial, military. It's built on the military code. Germany the same way. Turks have no culture outside Islam. That's the problem, you see. And so they're prone not to accept dissent very easily. Germans don't accept dissent very easily either. You see, and with catastrophic responses, we see this happening in Germany, and it also happened within Turkey as well. Mm-hmm. And so those who suffered under Ottoman rule, not only the Armenians, the Christians within Syria and Lebanon, the Muslims within Syria and Lebanon too, because Turks saw themselves, believe it or not, as the Übermensch too.
The master race.
The master race, of course. That's how they saw themselves. And even with the Arabs, the Arabs were tolerated because they were Muslim.
Well, then there's the Iranians, and I've known many Iranian friends who have a gentler way of doing the master race, and that is that everything that was ever invented that was any good was Iranian, and all culture from there east is Iranian, and so forth.
Don't forget. I mean, when you talk about Iran and Persia, it was a phenomenal empire. It was an empire that lasted over 1,000 years. It was a huge empire, and all of a sudden, these guys coming out in the desert, on horseback, was converting them to Islam, destroying their basic beliefs. And believe it or not, Iranians, actually Persians, accepted Islam quite easily. They rejected Arabs, but they accepted Islam. You see? And here's what happened even more. The funny thing about all this is that Arabs became Iranians. They adopted Iranian culture, they adopted Iranian food. And so when you look at the first Arab dynasty, which was purely Arab, that was based in Damascus.
Yeah.
That was the Umayyad dynasty. The second dynasty, the Abbasid dynasty, was totally dominated by Persia.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So Harun Rashid, 1001 Nights. Harun Rashid married two wives. One was Persian and one was Arab. He got Amin. Amin was his mother was Arab, and Al-Ma'mun, his mother was Persian. And Ma'mun assumed power and brought in, which was from the Persian side, and he brought in the Persians. So from very early on, Arabs lost their character within this huge sea of non-Arabs.
Okay. Now this is, I get a little vague here, this is beginning to get around the time of the golden age of Islam, is it not?
The Abbasid, yes.
The Abbasid is the golden age of
Yes,
Islam.
yes.
Now, this is a very interesting period. There was extreme freedom of thought.
Yes.
There were Jews and Christian scholars. They were studying the ancient Greek philosophy and recover it. They're the ones that recovered the Greek philosophers, and the West found them there and had to translate into Latin from that.
Al-Ma'mun did that. Ma'mun did from the Abbasid. Al-Ma'mun, the Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, and this is precisely where he established the first center for translation for. And it's not a coincidence that you find it was during this period that we begin to see Islam itself reformatting itself from the traditional form of Islam to a more Sufist. You have the Rumi, Al-Hallaj, you have a whole bunch of these philosophers coming in. And it was a struggle very much similar to the struggle that took place in Western society as well for Christianity. And unfortunately, the traditionalists beat out the secularists, the Islamic secularists. And so the Islamic secularists went along the route of Sufism. But the Islamic Arab part of Islam was shut down to new innovation in the 12th century. Only Persians and the Shiites remained allowed to stay open, and therefore they could modify the faith. But unfortunately, they did not, because they adopted a form of clergy that dominated and kept the whole thing down as well.
Yeah, we need to cover a couple of things here. Sufism is the Islamic mysticism.
Yes.
And the Sufi view is first you have to be in Islam, and that for many, many people this is just fine, but for some people it's not enough, and for them the deeper study is Sufism. The second interesting thing is that Sufisms, unlike the Christian monks, believe that if you don't have a job you're a bum. They have day jobs.
Yes.
The other thing is this position of the Ayatollah. And in Sunnite Islam,
We have no Ayatollahs.
well, you've got something. What you have is you have somebody at the mosque who has studied the law, and if you have a question, you can ask him.
But you don't need to.
You don't need to.
If
you want to, you can ask him.
If you want to, you can ask him.
And if you don't like the answer...
See, with Sunnism, the burden is on you. The burden is on you to basically search for your faith.
Right, and if you don't like the answer, you ask another one.
Another one, that's right.
But his job is to be an Islamic scholar of the law and so forth, if you have a question.
And that scholar can actually give what is referred to as the fatwa, which is the edict, the religious edict. But for a Sunni does not need to follow that fatwa.
Yeah,
they can follow it or don't follow it.
It's their choice.
It's choice. Shiism, no. Shiism, if the Imam gives a fatwa, then only a lesser Imam, only a higher Imam can remove that fatwa. This is one. And secondly, all those who follow that Imam have to adopt the fatwa.
And the following business in either case is you pick the person, and a person gains a reputation by the respect he gains
in the society.
and his scholarship.
That's correct.
So that even on the Shiite side, the high Ayatollah in Iraq got there because people respected him and chose to follow him.
Yes.
But their feeling is that he actually, in part, speaks for God. He's getting help from God because Muhammad, the Quran was there, and in the Quran it says if you've got a problem, ask Muhammad. Well, now Muhammad is gone, so who do you ask? And as for the Shiite Muslims, the who you ask is the Ayatollah, who is also authorized by God.
You see, here's the funny thing. Islam always says, if you have a problem, ask God. Because when you even come back to Sufism, when you talk about Sufism, the essence of Sufism is the love of God irrespective of heavens and hell. Loving God for the sake of loving God. And it's the melding of this individual within the spirit of love, is more important. Heaven and hell does not come in the picture. It's nothing to do with traditional religion. It's nothing to do... Ultimately is how much do I love my Creator, my existence? How much can I love love? Mm-hmm. Is the ultimate question that has been asked by the Sufis.
Another problem that Islam does not get into, that the Christians do, is they're not concerned with the nature of God. Their feeling is, number one, he's so different from us, you couldn't possibly understand him. And anything you would say would certainly be wrong and might even be blasphemy.
That's right.
So don't worry about it. It's a stupid question.
That's right.
Just forget it.
That's right.
You've got the directions in the Quran of how you're supposed to behave. Who or what God is, forget it.
You're not supposed to see him with your mind, but you are supposed to see him with your heart, because we lack the tools to understand him. And so asking these questions, though they might lead you somewhere, but they ultimately will not lead you to an satisfactory answer that you will be satisfied with either.
Yeah.
And so I said, forget about it. I mean,
it's
either
pointless.
do it, pointless dealing with that. Yes, indeed.
We need to touch on something else. They don't exist anymore, but a caliph.
Yes. Khalifa. Al-Khalifa. Khalifa, which means, it actually means a successor. And a successor is very interesting.
We don't have them now.
We had four successors of the Prophet: Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali.
Okay.
And then you had then really it ended. The Islamic rule ended and was taken over by a secularist by the name of Muawiyah, who assumed the caliphs.
Yeah.
But nobody took him seriously. And nobody took seriously the whole idea of the caliphate from 670 AD until today.
Okay. But caliphs did have certain political power and certain religious authority.
Oh yeah. But أحسنكم عند الله يتقاكم. The best of you is the most pious in the eyes of God.
Yeah.
You see. So
however, what people may not realize is that some of these people were women, and when it's a woman, it's called a begum.
That's how the Turks came in. Begum. The Turks brought this. But the Islam. You see, here's the funny thing.
But let me go back to this. So at various times, the nominal head of Islam was a woman as a caliph.
Well, women have always been considered to be the keepers of the tradition, the keepers of the faith, and the keepers of the religion as well.
Yes. Well, then there's the relationship between Muhammad and his wife.
Oh yeah. When he said what he said was Muhammad was very simple. He pointed to his wife and he said to her, He told his companions, take half of your faith from her.
She was before Muhammad received the Quran. She was a powerful woman.
That's
and
the first
locally,
one. That's the first one. That's Khadija.
Okay.
That's Khadija.
And a businesswoman.
It was Khadija. Khadija. I mean, Muhammad respected Khadija so much because he saw her. She was his first believer, his first companion.
Yes. She comes down from the hills, and this powerful businessman woman listens to her husband and says, "You're right," and goes with him.
Well, she actually, you know what she was? She was first of all a psychoanalyst. This is one. Today's psychoanalyst. She was his cheerleader. She was his philosopher, because what she did was very simple. Muhammad was confused, and she told him, Muhammad, what you're getting here is not what people get, what normal people get. You're getting something else. Let's do some more research here, and let's go to my brother-in-law. My brother, because Waraqa is able to. He's a Christian. Yeah. And maybe he knows more about this stuff than you and I do.
This voice in his head.
In his head. Okay? So and when he started talking about all these people, he was very confused. It was Khadija that grounded him.
Yeah.
First of all, she was older than him.
Yeah.
She was the one who asked him to marry her. She owned the wealth. He ran her caravans and he made her a far wealthier woman. I mean, he was her CEO, if you'd like to do today's terms. Okay, he made her a very wealthy woman and he was called an Amin, which means the honest one. And he relied on her throughout her life for comfort, for support, for his strength, and she provided that, and he never forgot that.
Yeah.
He never got married until Khadija died. And Muhammad got married to many women, that's true. But most of the marriages that Muhammad got married to were not women who were the 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds. They were women in their 40s and 50s and 60s, and much of the marriage was done to cement alliances.
Yeah, this was
not for sex or for
well, this was what marriage was for thousands of years in every culture.
That's right.
It was to cement alliances between families and had nothing to do with love.
But Muhammad, I mean, he was Muhammad always said, he said, I'm a man. I am not endowed with any special powers, and only what I have was endowed to me by given to me what I believe to by God. And you either believe that or you don't believe that. If you want to believe, believe. If you don't want to believe, don't believe.
Yeah.
But I have to say it.
Yes. Well, the original story is I think is kind of fun, at least in my sense. He's out in the desert, and something in his head says, recite.
اقرأ.
He says, recite what?
Yeah.
It says, recite. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. The third time it says recite, and he finds himself reciting.
He said, recite, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Recite in the name of thy Lord who has created man from خلق الإنسان من علق, from sperm and egg. And اقرأ وربك الأكرم. Recite in the name of thy gracious Lord who has taught man how to read by the pen. And so knowledge is very important in Islam.
And the doctrine is that what had happened is that God had decided to have an angel inscribe the entire Quran on Muhammad's heart. And over the course of his life, he recited off of that. And the Quran means recitation.
Recitation. That's right. It's recitation. You see, you have to, I mean, it's very difficult for me to explain the impact of the Quran to a non-Arab speaker. Muhammad says you cannot but hear the Quran because the truth in it will make a stone weep. Mm. It will break a stone and make it weep. Mm-hmm. And the Arabs were, if you look at Arabic as a language, Arabic is poetry. It has to rhyme. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't rhyme, it hurts the ear. Okay, when you speak Arabic, especially if you speak classical Arabic. Hence, and Arabic is poetry. It's not language, it's poetry. Everyone was asking, well, what is your proof? He said this. He said this. I have no proof of this.
If you like it, you want it. If you don't, you don't.
You don't. I have only this, nothing else. And the truth, for a Muslim, the experience of reading the Quran or hearing it is so strong that it takes you to a different world altogether. And for an Arab cannot. Here's the funny thing, that even Christian Arabs like to hear the Quran recited.
Yeah.
Because of the beauty of the verse itself.
Well, even shuttled over into English, we like to hear Rumi side.
Rumi side.
Even though it doesn't sound like it originally.
I mean, if you read Al-Hallaj or read the Rumi, their writing in their attraction and love for their creator is so beautiful. This is why I constantly tell my students, it's so wonderful to read so much of the literature in its original text.
Yeah.
Read Goethe in German. Reading Goethe in English is not Goethe. Read Goethe in German.
I don't see how anybody.
Read Machiavelli in Italian. Or read.
And I don't see how anybody can get Shakespeare except in English.
In English. I mean, reading Shakespeare in Arabic. It's boring. It's boring. If you read Molière in French, or Voltaire in French, it's wonderful. Or Rousseau in French, and the language, the nuance of the languages, the hidden meanings are so wonderful.
I want to drop back to something we mentioned earlier about politics driving religion. There is something that happened in the Christians in this country. One of the powerful political ones had a man working for him who was very good, but who left and returned to his church. And he said the reason he had to do that was that he was starting to make, or being urged to make, decisions based on what was good politically, not what he thought was true or good from Christianity. And he said it was time to go home.
I think so. I mean, the way I look at Christianity, I have a lot of respect and a lot of admiration for the original Christian texts that I find in the Middle East, among the Coptics, among the Chaldeans,
these are people we have no knowledge of.
Very little knowledge of that. I mean, I'm sorry no disrespect, but the King James Bible was made by a committee, by King James in 1605, 1606, or 1607. Where is Jesus Christ in all of this? I don't mean to insult, but it seems to me we should. If we want to gamble our life
On something being true.
on something being true, it seems to me that we should get to the bottom of it.
Well, the King James isn't bad. It's a darn good piece of scholarship for
It's wonderful scholarship. I don't doubt that. I think it's a wonderful bit of scholarship. But I saw a book just came out just a few months ago, precisely dealing with the committee that came around, that went around making this.
Ooh.
It's a wonderful book. I heard the writer on NPR. I can't think of, but it's and the problems that went along in trying to formulate this piece of scholarship.
Yeah.
Okay, and how much compromise went into formulating that piece of scholarship, and the translation of the language, what the words Greek to English.
Well, I'm going to be getting in on this show later. We're going to be going into the compromises that occurred to create the original books of the King James.
That's right.
And those are quite astounding.
That's right. So basically, I listened to a service provided in Arabic. In fact, even the Maronite church, the St. George over here in Lebanon, the services are in Arabic, and they tend to hold so much of the old scripture. But when you look at some of the real old Christian scriptures, they're very similar to Islam. They're very similar to Islam. It was not a coincidence that you saw a breakup between the Christian church, between Orthodox and between Roman Catholic. It's not a coincidence. It's a change in the way of life, change in politics, change in many, many different things. And ultimately, the Orthodox Church remained to somewhat the same. It has not really changed very much because it's stuck close as possible to the truth. The Roman Church has undergone God knows how many changes, how many internal revolutions,
then,
Luther, Calvin, and so forth and so
Well, then
forth.
Luther comes along and tries to strip all of that garbage off.
And go back to the original one.
Go back to the original
one. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
You see, Islam has gotten over this issue. First of all, because the relationship between you and your maker is private. And secondly, you want to believe. You don't want to believe, don't believe.
That privacy is very much part of Luther's idea, too.
Oh, yes.
Let's see. The terrorism and the killing of civilians and so forth is a modern aberration.
Yes.
And it's very modern. It's just not what's in the Quran. It's not what's been in Islam.
Well, it didn't exist before 1960, before 1970.
Yeah.
It just wasn't there. I mean, the bombing or the blowing up with Hamas that came up just in the 1980s and 1990s with the Intifada. Okay, and from there it spread like wildfire across the globe.
So it's almost a disease to Islam. It is a disease.
It is in a way a disease to Islam, but I think it's a political disease, much more than a religious one. Muslims might sympathize with the cause, but they don't sympathize with the cause in that fashion.
Well, this has been Freethought Forum and Mansour El-Kikhia, and a very interesting conversation about Islam. Thank you very much.
As I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei.